Hello and welcome to Cycles of Time, your weekly guide to what's happening on Earth as we make our revolutionary journey around the sun. For time immemorial, our human ancestors have created myths and meanings to help us adapt and thrive as seasons change. Join me each week to explore the intersections of these ancient cycles, from the indigenous medicine wheel to the pagan wheel of the year, the Babylonian and Greek zodiac to the I Ching, the ancient Chinese book of changes. I'm your host, Alison Dale, and this is the Cycles of Time podcast. Hello, everybody. Happy week of June 30th to July 6th, 2025. This is your Cosmic Energy Report for Monday through Sunday. And the vibe this week is provocative liberation. The sun is moving through the gate of provocation in human design, and it's also known as liberation. It's about kind of how we can be stirred a little bit from the status quo and liberated from existing norms. Thank you all so much for joining me. Those of you who signed up and joined me for the Cancer season breathwork journey that I hosted last week on the new moon. It was really lovely to dive into the archetypes of Cancer and embody them through the breath together. So I hope you join in for next month for Leo season. I am offering these sessions, which are 2-hour sessions once per zodiac season, where we go through kind of a community forum and discussion and with some slides about the archetypes and elementals of the season at hand. Then do a little bit of journaling and reflection on that to set some intentions for a breathwork journey, where we really breathe in a circular way for about 45 minutes together, guided to a music playlist, and really embody these elements and archetypes of the season. So you can always join me for those by signing up at booking a session at astrosomatics.com or on cyclesoftime.substack.com. I will be posting the link to the next session for that. It's part of my Embody the Revolution membership, which is my paid subscription tier on Substack, where if you join, you will get a guidebook for the season, each zodiac season as well, about a 40 to 50 page guidebook each month that goes through the human design, the elementals, the archetypes, somatic practices, and journaling prompts for the season ahead. And we also have this live meetup that's part of that membership, where we come together and do some breathing, do some journaling, some reflection, some sharing, and community discussion. So if you'd like to come to one of these each month or get access to the recording of these meetings, or work through a guidebook for the season ahead and tap into the wheel of the year that way, you can sign up as a paid subscriber at cyclesoftime.substack.com or upgrade to paid from free if you are a free subscriber there. And I'd love to have you join me for more of these sessions. They've been really juicy and really fun to get together and tap into all of these different vibes of the season ahead. So in these sessions, we look at a sign through a multidimensional and seasonal lens, really focusing on how everything related to the sign kind of is tied into the body and tied into the seasons and the earth and our body's relationship with the earth as a grounding force. That's definitely kind of the biggest influence of this project in general, is taking the wisdom of these ancient systems that were really relational systems with the earth, and from a time before we separated our bodies from the earth. I look at all of the systems that I talk about here at Cycles of Time as integrative systems that were all coming from a point in time prior to, or originating from a point in time that was prior to that separation of body and earth. So, we have the separation of church and state, the separation of various things in governmental context, but the separation of body and earth is one that I think has maybe gone a little too far, and that we're craving a bit of a return to. And so I tend to look at these and analyze these through that perspective, and ideally do it through not only a mental way, but an embodied way as well. So, for example, we look at each season through the lens of the elementals from the different wheels of the year. And Cancer season, the season we're in now, is within the element of fire, both in the medicine wheel and in the 5-element whooshing cycle of Taoism. And fire is this midsummer energy that's really all about everything being in bloom and blossoming and being, there's this heat wave running through the country right now. And so fire doesn't seem too far-fetched to consider as the element of this season. But of course, in the zodiac, Cancer is the element of water, cardinal water, and cardinal signs are all initiatory, startup kind of signs that start a season. And so initiatory water for me feels like a wellspring, a spring from underground that kind of breaks through the crust of the earth and initiates that process of initiates a river. So I think about Cancer, the crab is this animal that's confined in its shell and has a shell around it, but can kind of come in and out of its shell. There's a lot of dynamism there, but it is contained within that space, kind of like the water beneath the spring is contained underground. In these sessions, we also talk about the correlation of a zodiac sign with the body, and Cancer is correlated with the breasts and the chest and the stomach and the womb, these areas of our body that nurture life, that gestate life, that bring, contain nutrients, our stomach, and they're all in the central cavity of our body, and they're all about coming to providing care and nurturance and nutrients for our life. In the life cycle, we also look at the correlations of these signs with the stage of the life cycle. And I look at Cancer as the phase in the life cycle of adolescence where we're deeply connected with the world inside our shells. Cancer season's right after Gemini season, which is Gemini's all about communicating with the world around us and learning about the world around us through communication of various means, and it's associated with childhood in the wheel of life, where Aries is infancy, Taurus is toddlerhood, where we engage with the world with our senses, and then Gemini is engaging with the world with our intellect and our mercurial natures. So Cancer after that is this adolescent phase, post-childhood, where we're going inward a little bit more and learning about our inner workings. So if any of those things feel relevant at a very general level in this Cancer season, with this Cancer new moon having just passed, let me know in the comments. I feel like putting them all together, a lot of words and elements and archetypes in one place, kind of creating a bit of a soup out of them, can be really fascinating to kind of see how they are interrelated with each other. And so, how did the new moon show up for you? How are you feeling this week as we kind of transmute past that energy? Like I said in the very beginning, we do have new energy, liberating energy coming through this week, and we'll get into that in a minute. But to start out, I'll recap a little bit of my last week because I'm definitely still feeling the effects of it, but also feeling like the energy has shifted. And I like to reflect a little bit on the prior week in the beginning of these sessions, especially in Cancer season, because I think it's important to reflect on where we've come from before striding on to the infinite future ahead. So last week's new moon in Cancer was conjunct Jupiter, and there was a lot of attention on this new moon because Jupiter just entered Cancer and will be there for the next year. And Jupiter is this planet of expansion and can be considered a lucky planet, but it's a planet that expands on everything that it touches. And for me, this new moon landed in my 12th house of the subconscious. And so it really, I was hoping for trying to tap into this luck and abundance that I had heard so much about through my astrology peers about, what Jupiter in Cancer would be like. About bringing attention and growth to how we need to nurture and care for ourselves. And for me, being in the 12th house, it came across that nurturance and care. It showed up in that I need to nurture my subconscious and care for it because there was a lot of subconscious trauma and fear that came to light for me, especially relating to Cancerian themes of containment, of security, of nurturance, of water, of fire, of the womb space. All of these things really came to light for me kind of suddenly. And it was really interesting. I'm recording this podcast late because I'm really still coming out of a very deep processing weekend with all of this happening. And I think one of the reasons there is, in addition to the new moon last week being conjunct Jupiter, it also formed another aspect in the sky that I wanted to highlight here, just in case you had as intense of a week last week as I did. And my friend Lily from the Stellar Situation on Substack, she's an amazing astrologer, and she pointed to this, saying that this aspect was more important in the new moon than the Jupiter conjunction. And it was really a finger pointing to Pluto. Basically, the new moon in Cancer, the sun, moon, and Jupiter formed what's called a yod, which is a very rare and powerful aspect known as the finger of God. And it's an aspect between 3 planets or 3 points in the chart, where it's kind of like a long triangle or a long finger pointing from 2 planets to another planet, and kind of highlighting how those are all related to each other. And so this yod was the new moon, sun, and Jupiter in Cancer all together, and then Mars in Virgo close by, sextiling that. And then both of those were opposite to Pluto in Aquarius, kind of on the opposite side of the wheel. And so this yod is a long triangle that points from a couple different planets to another planet on the other side of the chart, resembling a long triangle or a finger. And so wherever that finger is pointing is the apex of those other signs and how they're connected. It's kind of a focal point. So it's kind of like a grand trine aspect, a triangle in the chart, if you're familiar with that, but it's more pointed and a little more intense because of its pointedness. And so that finger pointed from the new moon in Cancer and Mars in Virgo as the 2 smaller points of the triangle to Pluto in Aquarius across the wheel. And so there was a very poignant aspect in the chart that really brought Pluto into the forefront when we were considering that new moon last week. And then yesterday on Sunday, Mercury opposed Pluto in the sky as well. So there was a lot of Plutonic activation in the past few days, in the past week. So for me, this really showed up with that finger pointing from the depths of my subconscious, that 12th house new moon, to Pluto, which is across the sky in my partnership's house, my 7th house. And then the other point of the triangle is in my 2nd house, which is the house of what I value and my sense of security. And so it had this subconscious and security elements pointing towards partnerships. And old traumas really surfaced for me over the course of this transit through dreams and embodied memories and anxiety waves. And this was especially around subconscious and embodied fears of safety, of my own personal safety. And a lot rose to the surface in my dreams and my kind of fits of no sleep about a couple of near-death experiences that I really had thought I had moved through already. And they both involved a partner. So the 7th house Plutonic finger point of that yod really felt so on the nose. And I won't get into details about these experiences, but it's just wild when some things can rise to the surface in such a visceral way, and how visceral those memories can be after years of compartmentalizing them away and kind of stuffing them down and telling stories about them, but not feeling them. So having this subconscious safety activated in this way just kind of brought a lot to the surface. And interestingly enough, they were related to Cancer themes. One of them was, with Cancer being in this season of midsummer and the season of fire, I was really taken back to a house fire that I nearly died in about 14 years ago. A really traumatic experience where I hung outside of a window and almost fell. And it was a lot of terrible things happening. And then another one, after I gave birth to my daughter, I had a near-death experience where I lost a lot of blood after giving birth and went into shock. And both of these things came up for me in respect to how they're related to how I feel secure and how that's tied into a past partnership. And so I just had talked so much about the element of summer, fire, and also about the womb space and mothering, nurturing parts of the body in my Cancer season overview. And so when the new moon and Jupiter kind of came together in my 12th house in Cancer with this aspect to Pluto, so much that had been buried really deep within me came to light and came to the surface. And the 12th house is the house of the underground and the soil beneath the surface, the place where everything merges together, the place of the unseen. And having so many activations there, Jupiter expanding that area of my chart has really opened up a lot to process. So yeah, they say healing doesn't happen in a straight line, but a spiral. And that proves deeply true again and again. I didn't factor Pluto into my forecast last week, but I really do feel like its presence was undeniable in last week's astrology. And it did feel especially poignant as the sun moved through the gate of stillness last week, which I did talk a lot about. Stillness is gate 52, known as mountain over mountain in the I Ching. And this is the gate that the new moon in Cancer was in. And I feel like having all of this come to the surface, having these plutonic activation of this yod, having, the 12th house of these subterranean things come to the surface, was really beautifully held by the contemplations of this gate that the sun was traveling through and the moon was traveling through. I feel like the gate of stillness encouraged me to meet the resurfacing of these deeply traumatic kind of chaos memories and dreams with the rooted energy of an ancient mountain, a kind of a huge craggy peak and the stillness of a mountain. And the gate of stillness is mountain over mountain energy. So when things are pulled out from the deepest shadows, or when something in your life is expanded through this Jupiter transit or something else, if something feels like it's being magnified and to a point where it feels like you can't really contain it, this gate of stillness provides a really wise contemplation to come back to, which is about not overreacting in the current moment, allowing yourself to feel, allowing yourself to sit with stillness and sit with what's coming up. And by doing that, it really helped work through this stuff. I really haven't been blown off my feet by a transit like that in a long time. And I feel like I'm definitely coming up from deep underground still. But I think that the gate of stillness is something to tap into because Jupiter will be in that gate for the upcoming month. And so the sun is moving on Monday, June 30th from the gate of stillness into the gate of provocation. But Jupiter will spend a lot longer in each gate of Cancer. And so Jupiter, this planet of expansion, will be expanding this notion of stillness in our lives, gift of restraint, this gift of not reacting too quickly to our fears, to anything that feels overwhelming that's coming up. It's this calm and wise and non-reactive mountain-like nature. So continue to think about that gate and focus on that for the next month as Jupiter transits through it. I noticed also during this past week that my partner, who is providing a lot of support for me, has his natal Mercury in the gate of stillness. So his communication is related to this gate of calm, wise, non-reactive energy. And as we moved through that transit last week, and I was going through my own experiences, I could really see how his communication is shaped by this energy and this mountain-like energy. And so when I felt triggered or like pointing fingers, truly this yod was like the finger of God, and I was pointing fingers and feeling like popping off or crawling under the covers for hours at a time. The energy of stillness, really that's sitting with a feeling instead of trying to fix it or run away from it or distract from it, came through. So let me know in the comments how last week showed up for you, if there was anything big that happened in your life related to the areas of your chart that have Cancer, Virgo, where Mars was, or Aquarius, where Pluto was, and that, how Jupiter in your house of Cancer is affecting you. And this week we're moving on, where things are shaking it up a little bit. Pluto is no longer center stage, thank goodness for this moment. The focus is moving toward Venus, Uranus, and Neptune this week, making way for potentially beautiful, dream-filled, revolutionary vibes. And the sun is moving from the gate of stillness into the gate of provocation. And so this is a gate with the gift of liberation from obstruction. There's definitely a sense of something breaking open this week or finally being freed after so much stillness and pressure building beneath the surface. So the stillness can build a bit of stress, when we have to keep moving ahead. And so if anything feels like it's lingering, let this week be the week that there's some breakthroughs. And so let's get into the wheel. The medicine wheel, like I mentioned, we're in the direction south, the direction of fire, youth, summer, the mental realm. The whooshing element is also the element of fire between the spring element of earth and the late summer element or the spring element of wood and the late summer element of earth. And so we're in this full bloom of fire summer here. The zodiac season is Cancer, from June 20th to July 20th. In the I Ching and human design, we are moving from stillness on Monday, mountain over mountain, to provocation for the rest of the week from Tuesday through Sunday, and that is known as water over mountain. And we are in a waxing moon phase after that new moon in Cancer last week. And some planetary dances that are happening are Venus is conjoining Uranus in the last degree of Taurus in gate 8. That's happening Friday, right before Venus enters Gemini on the same day on Friday. And also on Friday, Neptune is stationing retrograde in Aries. So we'll talk about how those all combine forces in a moment. But let's start out this week with the sun traveling through the gate of provocation. It is a gate with the shadow of provocation in the gene keys, the gift of liberation, and the city of transfiguration. And it's a Cancer gate that draws its power from emotional depth and instinctual timing. In the I Ching, hexagram 39 is known as obstruction, which teaches that challenge and pressure are not obstacles to avoid, but catalysts that ignite clarity and courage and ultimately transformation. In human design, this gate lives in the root center in the body graph, which is the source of adrenal pressure, the pressure to do, to act. And so the gate of provocation brings this pulse of restlessness and a deep drive to break through stagnation and liberate something authentic from within. After recent transits through the gate of extremes, gate 15 at the solstice, and then last week's gate of stillness, gate 52, the energy has been building kind of like that wellspring beneath the surface of the earth, like a tide swelling beneath the surface. And gate 39 brings a little bit of a sharper edge, a little bit of that release, that bursting through. When I look at it as like the archetype of the crab, I like to look at the gates of the season as they relate to the archetype of the zodiac. And so in the gate of extremes, the beginning of Cancer season, the crab was kind of going back and forth between the water and the land along the shore, oscillating, living in different diverse environments, and then moved into the gate of stillness where it decided, it's better to just wait and not respond to every tide that comes in and out, but know that I can withstand the stillness and the stress of that, and that it's better if I actually just take some moments to be to wait for the opportunity to move. But this week, gate 39, crab is showing its claws. It's the time where it's been still long enough and something is coming to poke at it and provoke it and shock it into action. And it's not going to stay still if something is continuing to rattle it. It's going to show its claws. Crabs have big pinchers. And so they're not in this context, the crab will not show the claws to attack, but really just to assert its right to move and to live and to be liberated and free. So in the gene keys, this has the shadow of provocation, gift of liberation, and the city of transfiguration. And this week we learned that provocation can come from others or just from the context of life itself, but its purpose is never punishment. It's actually awakening, staying awake to the situation. Whatever's irritating you right now and whatever feels like pressure or friction might actually be trying to awaken your creative spirit and provoke you into aliveness. I'd say the key in this week's energy, this human design transit, is how we respond to it. If we're going to pinch back, if we're going to spend all of our energy after that clarity that was cultivated in the stillness, if we decide to get so provoked that we can't help but just keep on fighting backwards and chasing down the aggressor, or if we let the pressure guide us towards an awakening of new direction and use that emotional clarity that might have come up during the gate of stillness last week. Like, let the provocation, whatever it is that's provoking you, enliven you. And this week just asks us to listen to whatever it is that's provoking you, whatever is provocative. And the word provoked doesn't have to mean poking and prodding, but it can also be, akin to the word provocative, where it's exciting you in some way. So whatever is either poking you, prodding you, or exciting you this week, just listen to that, and listen not with fear and with reaction, but with a ability to respond, a responsibility and a presence, then cultivating that clarity and wisdom that came from some of the potential stillness that we experienced last week. So yeah, ask yourself this week, what is life trying to move through you, and where are your claws ready to act on behalf of your heart and your values? So this is, it's interesting, because when we were in the gate of stillness, it wasn't about laziness. It wasn't about staying still forever. It was about knowing when is the right moment to act. And this week there might be a moment to act. So some themes of this transit are tension, provocation, provocativeness, challenge, breakthrough, liberation, transformation, growth, and empowerment. You can think about this week how to use this energy of provocation to spark positive change in your life. Ask yourself if you're withdrawing or reacting impulsively when you're faced with challenges, or if you're embracing the tension as an opportunity to transform. And ask yourself how you can transmute moments of provocation into liberation and empowerment for yourself and others. So it's a pretty interesting gate. It feels like, the crab's claws. It's rare that crabs actually pinch. I think I've mentioned how much time I've spent with crabs this year. I've been at the beach a bit in my travels, and just seen so many different varieties of crabs, big ones, small ones, hermit crabs, giant blue crabs. And, they're usually just chilling, keeping to themselves, but they have these massive claws, right? Sometimes they are so intense, and you're like, when are you going to use that? Like, it keeps a certain distance, because, you can see, but they're not often fighting. They're not often using them for anything except this notion of protection and security, that they can be seen as a protective and secure force. And so this week just might be the time to show that a little bit, to remind yourself how you protect your own self and how you're nurturing yourself through creating that feeling of safety. Moving on to Friday, there's not too many astrological transits before that this week, but Friday is jam-packed with astrology. And on Friday, July 4th, the first thing that happens is Venus is conjunct Uranus at the last degrees of Taurus. And this is happening in Human Design Gate 8. And it really brings up a electrifying moment of closure and awakening. Uranus is the great lightning bolt. It is the disruptor. It is electric. And Venus is a planet of love and romance and what we value. And so when those come together, Venus also represents beauty and self-worth and money. And so when they come together, Uranus brings sudden change, disruption, or liberation, depending on how you want to think about it. Those can both be quite similar things, but it brings the call to be radically authentic those things, in our self-worth and our love languages and what we value. And they're coming together at the very last degree of Taurus, 29 degrees, this final anaretic degree, where when any planets hit that degree of any sign, there is a certain urgency and kind of fate-tinged energy at play. Kind of just like with the Grand Master in a Mario game where you've been playing, getting all the coins and like shooting toadstools all around, but then you reach like the battle, the final master battle. And that's how I see an anaretic degree, which is the 29th degree of a sign. So with both Uranus and Venus meeting there before they both move into Gemini over the next week, there is, this culmination of what has happened over the past month or so of Venus being in Taurus and the past 7 years of Uranus being in Taurus. And they're highlighting and playing off of each other and having this conversation. Taurus is ruled by Venus, so this transit is doubly potent, and it highlights themes of embodiment and sensuality and stability and desire. This conjunction is really suggesting a dramatic turning point, especially around these Taurian and Venusian themes of love and security and what we value. And something is really ready to be released or radically redefined in those realms. This Friday, it's the 4th of July on Friday as well, whatever that means to you. It's been a shape-shifting holiday for me. I always enjoyed fireworks growing up and just being in this midsummer energy. But of course, its origins don't always resonate with me as far as where our country is currently at. But I am proud to be an American. I can't undo what it is that I am, and so I like to celebrate in my own way, and I digress with that. But whatever the 4th of July means to you, it's very interesting that so much astrology is happening on the 4th of July this year, and there's, a certain electricity to the firework type energy of the 4th of July. There's a certain provocation to it. It can really provoke people in a negative or a positive way. Just be like the most thrilling thing or the most scary thing for my dogs, for example. But it's provoking, right? Fireworks and these mass explosions and celebrations of freedom very much tie into the themes of provocation and liberation. So I always think it's interesting how these holidays, secular and religious holidays, do tend to line up with these gates. Solstice was gate of extremes, and then we have the 4th of July and the gate of provocation. So super interesting there. This Friday you might experience sudden realizations about your relationships or your self-worth, relationship with yourself, or the things that you value or how your values are shifting and changing. And this could manifest as a desire for freedom in partnerships, or for some kind of freedom, to harp on that 4th of July theme. The need to express yourself more truthfully, or a shift in your values that just feels both like it's been waiting to happen, but a little bit scary, because shifting your values in an outward way is always a little bit scary. But it can also be provocative and exhilarating in the sense that you have a firmer sense of who it is that you are now than you used to. You're coming to this moment of Venus and Uranus with a bit of like a lightning bolt shining on what it is that you currently value in this moment when the lightning flashes. Not before, not how you got here. Last week was a lot about how we got here, I think. A lot about the past and a lot about where that finger was pointing towards the past, perhaps. But now we're meeting the current moment and the future with Venus and Uranus. And there's this strong pull towards expressing your truth out loud, even if it defies expectations or social norms. And it's about shining as yourself and in this present moment, and for your future self and for your future ancestors, not leaning into the version of yourself that's been curated to fit in to something from the past. And I think that we always curate our values and our sense of self because we ultimately, it's partly what we inherit, but it's ultimately about what keeps us safe. And you reach a certain point in life where what used to keep you safe is no longer necessary. You don't have to, you don't have to stay in the same pot that you were planted in just because it used to keep you safe. And that's what I've been thinking about a lot lately with these massive changes that are on the line, is that we sometimes feel like, well, I was born, the little seed was planted, or I was transplanted as a baby into this pot, and this pot represents everything that I value and everything that I think I am, my personality, like who am I? And sometimes plants grow too big for that pot. They need to be transplanted yet again or grow wild. And that doesn't mean that you're smashing the pot and saying, screw you, you never served me. You're giving that pot gratitude and saying it's time to move on based on who I am in this present moment. So that is the big energy of this Venus-Uranus conjunction, I would say. showing up as the real you in the lightning flash of the moment, and letting go of personas that were crafted for approval or survival in any of your past lives. This moment of Venus-Uranus in the end of Taurus is asking you to consider whether your values and your aesthetic choices and your relationships reflect your current truth or an outdated version of who you once needed to be. There's a tension here for sure. Like I said, that last degree of any sign is going to have that grand battle, master battle energy. And there's a tension between comfort and growth. Like you can get to the next level if you work through this with grace. And it can also be like, oh my God, this is scary. I do not want to go against something that's that much bigger than I've gone against before. So there's beauty to be found in the fight, in rebellion right now. And in the provocation. And again, it's not for the sake of chaos or just tapping into an addiction to reaction or fear, but really as an act of reclamation and reclaiming beauty in the way that you see it currently as a mark of your lived truth, your authenticity. And so, some things that might be happening in the course of this week, 4th of July, are urge to change your appearance perhaps, or redefine what it is that you find attractive, or just really completely rethink how you relate to love and money. And how you feel about security in general. Both of those things are tied in. Gate 8 is the gate of contribution, and that is where this conjunction is happening in the last degree of Taurus. And it teaches us about originality as well. It is all about this sense of authenticity, where it's not about being loud. It's not like a Leo energy of being on the stage, but it's this Taurus energy of being so in your sensuality, so trusting of your senses that you're not relying on past outdated versions of what you like codified and wrote down to be true, but you're actually in this present moment, recognizing what it is that you have to contribute right now. And so it's flowing from that embodied earth place that is where truth comes from in the moment. And so this transit might show you where you've been dimming your light for too long, or clinging on to those past versions of how you are supposed to contribute in this world. And Uranus here is shaking up the script and bringing them into your awareness as an invitation to offer up your gifts in a very new way, and just, bringing alive your contributions to the world in a way that feels yours, feels truly yours. So with this final degree of Taurus involved in this transit, there can be both endings and new beginnings happening simultaneously. The new beginnings will likely happen soon after, when Venus the very same day moves into Gemini, and next Monday, the 7th, Uranus will move into Gemini after 7 years. It's an outer planet, so it takes a longer time, but there's something wrapping up, and you may feel a deep inner knowing that it's time to walk away from a chapter that has defined your self-worth or your sense of belonging. And again, that can feel scary. That can feel like there's a lot of reflection involved, a lot of deep diving and being like, what's real? How do you end something? How do you start something new? But with Uranus involved, there is the promise of something unexpected and liberating taking the place of whatever it is that you are walking away from, or that's walking away from you. So whether it's new love or a new creative voice or a new way of valuing yourself internally, this moment is about freedom through living into your moment to moment truth, your organic expression of truth. So with this transit on Friday, you can ask yourself, what values or identities have I outgrown? How can I express love or beauty in a more honest and embodied way? Where have I silenced my voice or held back my contribution? And recognize that this isn't about being rebellious for its own sake, but really about creating the conditions in your life that allow your authenticity to breathe. So with Venus and Uranus meeting in Gate 8, the most beautiful offering you can make to the world is the truth of who you are. And I think it's a pretty powerful, beautiful transit that's happening here when the sun is in the gate of provocation with that similar energy. There's just like liberation, endings, new beginnings, that cracking through of Cancer season, spring spring, the wellspring, the water coming into the world, and that will help us care and nurture ourselves in ways that are real, and not in ways that we've been sold through the self-care industrial complex. So yeah, that's that. Then Friday, moving on, Venus is entering Gemini and Neptune is stationing retrograde, which will mark a shift after that big closure, that big revelatory, authentic closure of a chapter. Venus is moving into Gemini, and it's really kind of Venus in Gemini feels light of heart, curious, communicative, and flirtatious. She's kind of seeking connection through ideas and words and playful exchange in Gemini. And this transit is inviting us to explore new perspectives in our relationships and our finances, and to engage with beauty in a dynamic way, and keeping things open and fluid and a little less attached, perhaps, after ending something in that Taurus part of your chart where it's about rootedness and deep sensuality. Venus enters Gemini and is open to new possibilities, I would say, as the weeks progress ahead. So Venus in Gemini is chatty, is kind of like texting and social media and flirtation. It just feels like a big thing with Venus in Gemini. But then the same day, we have Neptune retrograding in Aries, and Neptune will retrograde back into Pisces, and then in the beginning of next year come back into Aries, and then moving into Aries for the next 13 years or so, I believe. So Neptune retrograding through this first degree of Aries is about introspection, reviewing what it is that we're dreaming about, reviewing our ideals, reviewing our illusions, delusions, our dreams, and doing that especially as it relates to our sense of identity and independence and initiation, these Aries themes. So Neptune in Aries is this bold urge to act on a dream and to be a kind of spiritual warrior, to merge your mysticism and spirituality with your embodied instinct. And that's what's been happening for the past little while. But now that Neptune is retrograding, we're asked to slow down and reflect on how that's felt so far, this Neptune entering Aries. And, it's going to be in Aries for many years ahead, and so we've had this little sampler, this little preview into what that's going to be all about. And now that it's retrograding and going back to Pisces, it's a chance to kind of have some checks and balances surrounding that active dream that's coming into play. And so I would ask yourself in this retrograde period, whose dream you're living and where your spiritual drive is rooted, whether it's that deep, authentic truth of this moment or whether it's escapism. So as Neptune retraces and slips back into Pisces later in the year, it's like this revisitation of the last stages of a 165-year cycle. That's how long it takes for Neptune to orbit the sun. And so Pisces is the last sign of the zodiac, Aries is the first sign, and so we're kind of just checking back in with this end of end games for Neptune. And Pisces is Neptune's home. It's the modern ruler. Neptune is the modern ruler of Pisces, and so this retrograde feels like kind of a final spiritual release of old karmas, old delusions, collective grief, and illusions that have been held for a long time over the course of maybe 165 years or so. So on a personal level, it's a return to the place that you've been for the past 11 years or so with Neptune in Pisces. And it's this final opportunity to meet that master again. Like I said, last degree of Pisces is, or the last degree of any sign is where you're meeting the master of that sign. And when it's that retrograde coming back, it's almost like you've been there before, you've beat that master before, and now you get to really look it in the face and say that you know how to do it, you know how to beat it. And it's a chance to surrender into that Pisces energy before we fully leap into the next era of Neptunian evolution in Aries. So Neptune's retrograde beginning this week. I need to look up when it will re-enter Pisces, and I might do that. But it's still going to be in Aries in that retrograde. So this first part of the retrograde is about, over the course of this week particularly, is about reviewing how it has felt for Neptune to meet Aries, and just slow down and consider what those two archetypes, the Lord of the Sea meeting the Lord of War, the God of War instinct, are, how that feels for them to meet up. So paired with Venus entering Gemini on the same day, this moment is offering a blend of mental curiosity and flirtation with life, and also spiritual introspection about how you are battling this in your own embodied way, and how you're moving forward into a new cycle in an embodied way. And Venus is wanting us to engage with ideas and stories and connection, and Neptune is calling us to feel what can't be said and tap into the wisdoms of the ocean. So there's a paradox that we're holding as these planets move in to these new configurations, and they're saying, let the mind stay curious and light and willing to play, but let the soul sink deeper. Let the soul sink deeper into the silent places where meaning forms. This week is a beautiful time to tap into liberation and freedom. Notice what it is that's provoking you or is provocative to you. Journal your dreams and question your motivations and revisit spiritual practices. And it's cliche to say, but release what no longer resonates, because we have this 29th degree conjunction happening. So yeah, through that provocation, recognize what is no longer serving you, what the old stories are, and release them. Let them go. Make room for something new so that you can embody your new vision, the changes that are coming with clarity and courage. So like I said, next week, the major planet of disruption and liberation, Uranus, is entering Gemini for a 7-year stretch. It will retrograde back into Taurus and then back again into Gemini, but that's what these planets do, so we won't get too deep into that. But ultimately, this is the first touch of Uranus into Gemini, where it will stay for the next 7 years. So I have some horoscopes that I've written for that coming to you later this week. Look out for those. They're for your rising sign or any sign that you identify with, and that will be how Uranus in Gemini will affect you. But then we'll talk more about that in the general transit next week, and I really do hope that you have a beautifully liberating week ahead, letting some things crack through where they're needed, see the light at the end of the tunnel kind of stuff, and yeah, stay embodied. If you'd like to join Embody the Revolution to walk the wheel of the year in community, you can do so by becoming a paid subscriber on Substack, and you'll get, again, that detailed guidebook for each zodiac season in your inbox, a monthly live breathwork journey on Zoom to tap into the energies of the season, a calendar of all the astro and human design transits of 2025 into 2026, and then access to the chat on Substack as well. So sign up for $8 a month and get all that, or else sign up for free on my Substack to get this in your inbox every Monday if you're not already. And as usual, any support through likes or shares or comments are always helpful, or reviews. So if you're listening on any certain platform that has an easy way to click a heart or something like that, or a star, go ahead and click that heart or star. It will help me expand my reach and continue to bring this cyclical energy to the peoples. So have a beautiful week ahead, and thanks so much for listening. Bye.